country's 47 counties. At least 16 people have been confirmed to have been killed so far, hundreds more injured, most, according to Amnesty Kenya and the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, shot by police. If you remember, again, the protest last year, the same as this year, was largely led by Gen Zs. A youth-driven wave of resistance, and it is more than just a reaction to proposed tax hikes. It is a nationwide indictment of corruption, inequality, and impunity. The death in police custody of activist blogger Albert Ojwang, whose supporters suspect torture, has also deepened the outrage. I have with me today two very, very important guests who are going to not only highlight and help us understand what's going on in Kenya right now. Incidentally, if I may add to that, I think President Ruto was supposed to have been in Nigeria, but it was cancelled. So my first guest is Maliba Arnold, a respected public policy analyst. He's helping us to understand the implications of governance, civic space, and state legitimacy. My second guest is also Monica Atieno. She's a digital strategist at Siasa Place. She's been tracking the youth-led digital resistance from the front lines, hashtags, live streams, VPN, and all together. So we're going to be exploring it. What's really driving this uprising? Monica, welcome. Maliba, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you hear me, Monica?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you for both for joining us. Let me start with you, Maliba. We've seen protests erupt in 23 of Kenya's 47 countries, with Amnesty and the KNCHR confirming at least 16 deaths. What does the sheer scale and intensity of these protests tell us about the current level of public discontent and indeed the state's capacity to respond democratically?
Thank you very much. I think it's to actually put the scale, to readjust scale to reality. It's actually 28 officially acknowledged counties. A county in our instance is relative to what you guys refer to as a state on that other end, because our counties have governors as well, just the same way your states have governors. The only difference is that yours is a federal system, and we still largely run a central government that has got devolved units by way of calling them counties. So officially, it's acknowledged that 28 counties were affected by demonstrations. But then realistically, about 40 counties had some element of protests happening. It's also important to actually put this out that demonstrations and picketing are allowed in our constitution, specifically in Article 37. It is allowed that as long as you are peaceful and you are unarmed, you can actually come out and express your displeasure. So that is allowed by law. But like you clearly put it, this was supposed to be a memorial. This anger stems from two broad reasons, according to me. The first one is that we did not, as a government and as a country, we did not manage the aftermath of last year's demonstrations properly. After the Gen Z, locally we've been calling it the Gen Z demonstration because largely that was the first public engagement for the generation, the cohort we call Gen Zs here locally. So, and those are digital natives. Myself, I'm a millennial, and I know that we grew through the digital revolution. We are not natives, but we grew through the revolution. So, but then the difference between we millennials and then Gen Zs is that Gen Zs are digital natives. They literally grew up with iPads and stuff. But all these things, we, the millennials, grew through them, seeing mobile phone coming up and going through until having an iPad and everything around that. So it was a little bit of a phenomenon that people had not seen for a while, or at least in a demonstration in our instance. So young people coming out with iPhones, taking selfies, a little bit of a demonstration done differently. When I was slightly younger, ours will be going out and ensuring that it's as painful as is possible to the authority. So we did not manage the aftermath properly. Parliament did not constitute even an ad hoc committee to look into the issues that had actually led to the uprising last year. Nothing was done around that. The police have not conclusively dealt with the cases, including extrajudicial murders, the abductions that followed after that. Even the executive did not demonstrate leadership after last year. And then slowly, some of the issues that caused the demonstrations last year started creeping back. There has not been a little bit of change on opulence. Leaders still show a lot of opulence around. A number of things that were temporarily stopped started coming back. We've seen there has not been abating corruption still happens. We see the arrogance from the leadership. And young people feel like, generally the country feels like the leadership is not listening. Even today, a while ago, the president spoke, and he still is talking at the people and not talking to the people.
Indeed.
So had we come up with a framework of having a dialogue after last year, the scale of the demonstration this year would have been different. But as we headed to June 25th, one thing happened. We started seeing the media reporting that some government elements were preparing goons to attack demonstrators when they come to the streets. We saw some language from people who are supporting government saying that they will bring in violence. If people come to the street, they will meet violence, they will be abused, they will be dealt with. And as you speak, as you say that, people get very angry and will get worked up. I have looked at some ratings, and the rating puts the president today at 14%. There has never been a president in our republic who at midterm in his first term will be rating below 40%. This one is at 14%. So you understand where the talking at each other is actually coming in.
Thank you so much, Maliba. Monica, let me ask you, am I right in presuming you're a Gen Z? Before I jump.
No, I'm actually a millennial.
Well, so but I'm still going to ask you this. Here's the thing. Often you hear, these protesters are, they're led by Gen Zs. It almost, I don't know how it sounds to you, but to me, would you agree that it's like a form of reducing the power, almost making it seem like, it's just those children, they're angry, they don't understand, and, and demeaning the actual, the factors that inform the protest in the first place?
Actually, when you say it like that, it does sound demeaning. Just as my brother here has said, we have seen a lot of discontentment from the younger generation. Most of the past demonstrations were usually held by the older generation, and it was a different type of demonstration. It was to press from a different perspective, to press for a different outcome from the political leaders. But this time around, the younger generation have decided not to stay at the background and watch as the older generation fight for a future that it is them that they are living it right now. Most of the challenges that you find the Gen Zs are going through, most of them are university going age. So during this regime, the university funding model was changed. There's a report that stated over 10,000 students have either dropped out or deferred their studies. So we are at a point where there's a lot of frustration from the youth. There's unemployment. They cannot depend on the education system. There are no jobs because also the leaders, the political system that we have, it is the same people who are always in leadership and the political positions. So I think it is a good thing that the Gen Zs have refused to relent and are keeping on pushing towards having their voices heard.
Thank you. Maliba, let me ask you, one of the points that I mentioned in the introduction was the death in custody of Albert Ojwang, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, forgive me. And it's become a galvanizing symbol because, much like what we saw with, George Floyd in America. Talk to us about the Kenyan justice system and the policing system.
The Kenyan criminal justice system is just as complicated as many criminal systems across Africa. But then specifically on the Ojwang issue is that we've had issues of extrajudicial killing and disappearances, what you would call enforced disappearances. We love to use the word abduction here, but here the capacity and the level of such disappearances are so complicated that an ordinary citizen would not be in a position to actually do that. Because ordinarily in this country, if anyone were to run away with you, Kenya is fairly technically, or rather technologically, at a level where it might not, today in Kenya, you might not disappear without anybody seeing you. So we've seen people being grabbed off the streets, the CCTV, it comes in and some of them feature up, or rather they are discovered, their bodies after a few weeks, a few days, dying. Others are released after a little bit of pressure and people going to the streets. So all of us, as much as the government has not actually accepted, all of us know that these are state-enforced disappearances because the level of disappearance, the level of bravado in the streets, the people who do that. Today, in this country, somebody does something and in a very short time, you are actually identified who you are. But people are captured on camera and then you don't see that happening. So Ojwang's death followed in the footsteps of many that had happened earlier on. But then the difference was that this time around, the police went and picked him at home in his father's homestead at lunchtime as the family had a meal. They introduced themselves. They said he had written some information about the Deputy Inspector General of Police and that they wanted to have him taken away about 400 kilometers from Nairobi. And of course, the father handed his son to them. But then the next day, the father shows up. They keep on taking him round and round. He's traveled from Western Kenya to Nairobi. And then at about 10 a.m., they tell him that something happened. And this is how then the anger actually sparked. Initially, the police say that Ojwang hit his head on the cell wall. Our police, the Kenyan police and truth is like water and oil here. When the police say the truth here, it's actually very rare, especially when there is a mistake. So initially they put in the statement they put out is that he committed suicide by hitting his head on the wall. Before you go into a police cell, they take away anything that you can use to harm yourself. No belt, no shoelaces, you can't go in with shoes, anything. You go in literally with plain cloth. Then by the time we do the autopsy, the report comes in and realize that this guy was beaten up. So then, of course, they have to pull back. The Inspector General of Police has to apologize. That served as a rallying point, not necessarily because it was different, but because the police had kept on lying continuously, and we had seen this death in the past. Unfortunately, it happened as we got towards the June 25th first annual, or rather the memorial. The second thing is that whatever issue that causes Ojwang to be called on by police was about corruption in the police. So it's the same issues that we are about. So our system still has got a little bit of gaps. We changed our constitution and in 2010 took on a new constitution. We brought in a sweeping list of changes or series of changes that were supposed to work. But then it has become difficult because, we didn't purchase ourselves a new police system. Initially, it was the Kenya Police Force.
Of course.
So we even dropped the word force. And in the spirit of trying to come up with a civic-facing police unit, we call it the National Police Service. So the word force was replaced with service. That police work is a service to the citizenry, and the word force is then reserved for the military. But they still have got elements of a force in them. They've really not, the police reforms we've done over time have not really changed. So it is the lying by the police. It is then the discovery by the autopsy. And then CCTV footage again showing up when the police lied that they took him to hospital when he was alive. We see CCTV from the hospital he went to and realized these guys had only gone in for a confirmation of death. And then they kept on changing the storyline. That makes the people very angry because Kenyans are a little bit assertive. When it comes to civic rights, Kenyans are a little bit assertive, fairly much more than a little bit of our neighbors. So long as it's in the Constitution and it's under the Bill of Rights, they are not very polite when it comes to asking for that. So that reminded them of the so many problems that were there. And Albert is a young person, fairly. In our country, the definition of youth is anybody who has turned 18 years and has not turned 35. So at 31, Ojwang was still a youth according to the Constitution of Kenya. So then people go out, it's a rallying call, and then even as people go out to demonstrate, the government or the regime of the day sends goons again to go and disrupt the people who are protesting. So, and that was a week before the 25th June day. So when they send in goons, people prepared for goons on 25th. So literally, by the time people show up on 25th, the anger is up there.
Of course.
But the most important thing is this. On 25th, the government did not allow for a peaceful demonstration. It's important to state that out there. The families and other people wanted to do a procession, starting from one point of town and go all the way to Parliament Road, where a lot of young people were shot on 25th. When we woke up in the morning, we found razor wires all over the city. Parliament Road had been enclosed with a new razor wire. State House had been closed around. So when families try to meet, they are tear gassed. So when the police make it impossible for the people to meet peacefully, then other people get angry, and then but the first shot was not fired by the citizens. It's important to put that out.
Thank you.
That it is the police that started to tear gas the people.
Okay.
And once you tear gas young people here, it becomes a festival.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Monica, let me come to you. Look, Maliba has made some very, very important points. And of course, we did see the agitation for Ojwang a week before. Protesters have been saying things like, this is not our parents' protest. And they say things like, we don't need politicians to speak for us. Are we witnessing the birth of, some sort of decentralized civic engagement, in your opinion? And also in all of that, I would like you to talk to us about the digital part of the actual protest, the organizing, that's the word, the digital organizing. Twitter was throttled. Yesterday, I remember watching the fact that the government had said no local television was allowed to broadcast it. One particular station broadcasted it. They got shut down. They went to court immediately. They won the case. Talk to us about this, about that, forming and planning and how we got there.
Thank you. One thing we have to appreciate about the Gen Z is that the approach that they chose of working without a specific leader has given them the power to not have this movement be associated to any tribe or to any particular leader. So no one can take credit for creating the movement. The digital space has been a very key aspect of this movement because we have seen the creation of posters. People shared hospitals that could provide first aid during the protests in case of injuries. The social media space has also been very key to identify churches and other buildings where people could run to for safety in case they're in the midst of harm. So we really appreciate the involvement and the capacity that the digital space has created for the youth during this movement.
Thank you. I didn't want to interrupt you. I thought you were still speaking. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But let me do, I will still stay with you, Monica.
Sure.
With you had the Kenyans, because Alex said something, I think if I may paraphrase him, that Kenyans are aware of their rights as long as it's in the constitution. So they were using VPN to actually communicate. What does this mean for the future of digital resistance in Kenya? And how, I mean, is it possible at all for the government to stand up to that, to challenge that? Or is it a lost cause for them?
It was actually sad to see them asking the media channels to stop broadcasting the protests during the sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I think it will be a bit difficult to challenge the use of VPNs. One thing the use of VPNs helped the youth with is in some areas during the protests, there was low internet coverage. It was difficult to make calls, to send out information. So if you change your area code, it is easier to still use the internet while within a region that is blocked. So I don't see how the government is going to be able to counter this at the moment.
Thank you. Maliba, let me come to you. Kenya's public debt is now over 70% of GDP. Basic goods are unaffordable and youth unemployment remains high. Would you say this unrest is about taxes, or is it really about years of economic exclusion and broken trust in public institutions?
First of all, I think it would be important for me to just point out this.
Please
One of
go
the
ahead.
reasons why these demonstrations look like they're vicious is because there are stages we considered ourselves past as a nation. We would look at our neighbors when the governments of the day switch off the internet or switch off the media, and we would chuckle at that. Because the people ahead of us, the generations ahead of us, had fought that impunity to a point that we considered that past tense. So when we looked at countries where the media will be switched off during election or when there's an unrest, we used to think we actually are past that. So when the government last year switched off or rather slowed down the internet for days, we thought we were past that because we enshrined that right in the Constitution. In the Bill of Rights from Article 31 all the way to Article 37, we gave ourselves what we call the sunshine clauses. Freedom of conscience, access to information, freedom of media, freedom of expression, all the way to even a freedom to assemble, to demonstrate, and to picket within the framework of the law. But then, somehow the administration of the day has been looking at these rights as borderline terrorism. You've seen the president and even the minister for interior using the word terrorism. And they want to use that because they want to apply anti-terrorism laws to stop civic disobedience, which in our law is actually allowed. So that is one of the reasons why you see a little bit of viciousness. I was on TV on that day. I was doing live commentary. When the letter came in, the letter was not specific. It did not cite any specific, if I'm going to accuse you for having broken the law, and that is the practice here, is that I have to be so specific that during the show, this particular word was said and it's not an allowed word. It was just a blanket. And then they cited an old law, a 1998 law, when every law that we have in this country has been made to be updated so that then it is in sync with the Constitution of Kenya 2010. So that is one of the reasons why you actually see a little bit of people getting angry and pushing back, because we feel like the administration of the day wants to walk us back on what we call the dark days. You asked about the public debt. You asked about if it is systemic exclusion. I started being part and parcel of policy work about 15 years ago, public policy, because my bread and butter comes from public policy. So when I started dealing with policy work about 15 years ago, I got one phrase that was so common. If you looked at our data, our population data, and as we modeled, there was this issue about youth bulge. And we knew as early as 2010, 2011, when I was looking at the documents around the youth, that we were expecting a youth bulge in mid-2020s. That is why when we worked on our national blueprint called the Vision 2030, one of the issues we wanted to deal with was a youth bulge that we expected to fall between 2022 to 2027. So we are clearly within the youth bulge. So, and we expected during that time, even as we spoke, we've been speaking about the youth bulge for the last 15 years. So at policy level, and people who have been in government, no one should give an excuse that we never saw this coming. The data clearly showed us that we would have so many young people showing up, or rather being mature at the same. The birth rates in the back had actually gave us, or rather made it in a way that we were going to have so many young people. So today, you have got in excess of about, for a population of about 54, 52 million, you have got about 18, between 18 and 34. That is quite substantive. Those people need dowry to go and get married. Those people need jobs. Those people need homes. And then the economy has not been growing so much. You spoke about the size of the public debt as compared to the GDP. Let me try to make it simpler for you. For every 10 shillings we collect, 7 shillings is going to servicing debt. Out of every 10 shillings we collect, 7 shillings is going to service debt.
But may I interrupt you on that? Let me interrupt you then, because I've got to ask. Ruto has only been around for what, a year? Was some of that debt not inherited by Ruto?
He was a deputy president for 10 years under the previous administration that actually borrowed madly, and he defended that debt. When he ran for office, he convinced us that he knew a way around this. So he therefore is not new. He did not land from the moon. He was a deputy president, and a deputy president of note during 10 years under Uhuru Kenyatta, where most of this debt was taken. But the biggest problem we have with him is actually how they are spending money. There's too much corruption. There's too much impunity. The priorities, they're not putting money to public service, or rather to purchase of public goods and services. I'll give you an example. We have seen a budget to renovate the State House 3 times now. If you work closely, it will give you about 4 billion Kenya shillings. That is roughly about 4 by 5. That should be around about 20 billion naira. For the last 2 years he has been in, what is he renovating with that money? It's too much. So renovations, he has come up with ways of coming up with jobs that end up putting money in his friends' pockets, which means that is just his money. And it's out there, Kenyans can see, because we put in place systems that can show how procurement is done. And there's too much. Atieno spoke about the funding model for higher education loans board. They changed that. They made it so difficult. There were places where we were making fun that you will get twins who are they are all the children of one person, probably a teacher. Then the tool that is supposed to allocate them the level of the loan they will get from the new funding model from the higher education loans board, you find twins who start education in the same year. And we've got several cases like that. And sometimes twins can actually be mysterious. You find they got the same grade. So twins of the same parent doing the same course, but when the measuring instrument comes up, you find that one is seen to be in a lower grade and the other one is different. This is the same parent. They got the same the same grade. They are doing the same course, but somehow one is looked at as a rich child and the other one is poor. Too much conjecture and a lot of abracadabra that does not make sense.
Before I go to Monica, again, I need to challenge what you said. So we've talked about, William Ruto, but Kenya is a democracy, right? What are the other MPs? At which point do you hold the other MPs or the other members of your parliament responsible?
So first of all, you realize that last year people went to parliament. In our setting, the parliament should be the highest organ, because if it were an organization, then parliament is the National Delegates Conference, the highest decision-making agency or body, because that is where representation is. And the concept of representation is a little bit complex. What are you representing? It's about interest. So members of parliament should be able to pick problems from the ground, take it to the National Assembly, get a solution, and then channel it back to the people. The reason why people marched on Parliament and overran it last year, they felt that Parliament had become an appendage of the executive, that Parliament was no longer listening to the people. It was no longer a house of the people's representative. And that is why the anger was with Parliament, and people marched on Parliament. If you look at online, the conversation that has been there before this year's memorial, people are saying, we already went to Parliament, we wrote off those particular people. Now, the next target is to march on State House, where the president is, because we do not believe that members of Parliament are representing us, because you see, they pass policies that are very pro-executive. They pass policies, as in the president is simply ordering around these parliamentarians. There is quite a number of them who are free thinkers, but in Parliament as a deliberative assembly, people make decisions by voting.
Indeed.
So when you are outvoted, the maximum you can do is to simply shout or raise your issue. It gets on record, and that is all.
Thank you.
Monica, so that is the place of the legislature.
Thank you. I'll be opening up the lines in a few minutes. Just hold on. Monica, let me come to you. With, Africa is known for its mass youth population. And one thing we're beginning to see more and more of is that this youth population continue to organize digitally, and they use, the youth-led uprising is a power that's coming together more and more in Africa, in different parts of Africa. Do you see what's happening in Kenya as part of that, growing pattern of, continental trend? Yes,
the digital space will be used more and more for more civic education for the youth. We'll see like organizations like Siasa Place are trying to teach the young people how to hold their leaders accountable through these digital spaces, and also like within their communities, without necessarily putting themselves at risk of sounding as if they're attacking the leaders, which ends in the issues we've seen of abductions because of social media posts. So I believe this is a growing trend that is a very positive thing to consider for Africa and for Kenya.
Indeed. Right. I'm going to open up the lines. You can call 0201-277-0993, 0201-465-7190. And WhatsApp number is 0809-597-5805. Monica, let me stay with you for a minute. As a young person, yes, you're a millennial, or they've started calling. Bear with me a second. Let me just answer those calls. Bear with me. Hello? Hello?
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. What's your name and where are you calling from, please?
My name is Emmanuel. I'm calling from Ikorodu.
Okay, go ahead, Emmanuel. Please speak louder.
What is happening in Kenya? Is it Kenya, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, it's exactly what is happening in Nigeria, where the legislature is just a tool of the executive. The only difference is that people in Nigeria don't want to react. So let your guests know that what they are facing is what we are facing as well.
Okay.
So Nigerian people should sit up.
Thank you. Right. So I've totally lost my train of thought. You talked about youth engagement, etc. I want to ask you, by youth or by civic engagement, is that are those digital tools or digital library being used to encourage young people to actually get involved with governance and take hold of their communities, of their districts, etc.?
Yes, they are. One approach we are using is to use the community-based organizations and civil society organizations. So through them, we identify issues within the community and identify which leader is responsible for that certain issue that has been identified. For instance, there is an incomplete road. Who is responsible for completing the road? So we use these civil society organizations through these issues that have been brought up by the youth to hold these leaders accountable, to understand whether it's an issue of misappropriation of funds, misuse of funds, or just a delay in completion of a project.
Indeed. Thank you. Okay, let me just answer that call. Hello? Hello? Hello. Okay, Maliba, I'm going to come to you. Oh, bear with me. Lines are going. Hello.
Sorry, please.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good
I'm
evening.
Maduka from Festac.
Go ahead, Maduka.
Yeah, I'm Maduka from Festac. I just want to ask your guests, or maybe a kind of my own expression opinion. As you continue to protest, it's also to look at the goal. What the goal of the protest? Look at the constitution. Can you change certain parts of the constitution that give rise to this kind of politician? Because you remove the politician, another one will show up.
Thank you.
And with the same line. So look at the constitution. What do you need to change? If the opportunity comes up, change it. Then most importantly, set up a roadmap, a fresh foundation for a new Kenya economically. As you are doing this, make sure you have it. If you don't have it, you jam it, and you still don't have answer to it, your same old politician will come back.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. I don't know whether you heard that. Did you hear that?
We did.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, I heard.
Maliva, I'll let you answer that very quickly, if you can answer it in a minute.
I'll just probably remind Maduka that, first of all, Kenya is among the few countries that actually had a kinetics fight. When we talk about, for us, we had a kinetics engagement with our colonizers to allow us go, as in for them to leave. If you check out in history, Kenya literally had about a 7-year bush engagement with the white people until they left. A lot of African countries. So it's not new. This militant mentality is not necessarily new. The fighting spirit around here is not new. So our first liberation was to get the white man to leave, and we called that independence. So in our instance, we call it the first liberation. The second liberation for us took about 50 years. We realized that independence alone is not enough. We wanted good governance. So for so many years, about 50 years, there were a lot of push and pull to have good governance. And how did we do that? We needed to institutionalize that. So that is embodied in the Constitution 2010, which by a lot, if you are a person who socializes with documents from elsewhere, you realize that it's quite progressive, quite above the cut and above the fray. So the third, and in my opinion, the final liberation is socioeconomic empowerment, that it's not just enough to be in a free country. It's not enough to be in a country that has got a progressive constitution that can allow you to speak and say and do anything, but that should reflect in the quality of life you live. Now, there's the aspect of sovereignty. Our constitution says that all sovereign power belongs to the people, and the people can exercise that either directly or indirectly through appointed and elected officials. In places where appointed and elected officials do not appear to be adhering to the constitution, then we can recall the sovereignty and act, the sovereign power, and act in our space. So he asked about what is the goal. Number one, the goal is accountability. If you sit back, we've realized that systems have got away. Systems don't give. You have to push them to give. If there's going to be quality about quality of service provided,
I need you to wrap up.
If you do not push for accountability, you not get that. By the way, we have got a glut of young, professional, and forward-looking leaders. There will not be a problem if this government failed today or tomorrow. We will actually have other people filling that position. But for the time being, before 2027 comes into place, we will push for accountability. We will push that the right thing be done. We can't sit and say, okay, we will just wait. That we can't do.
Okay. Monica, do you have anything to add to that before? Because I have a text message here. Do you have anything to add to that? To what Maliba just said?
No, but just to say that at least for the future, we are looking for a more sustained engagement that will move beyond the protests, so that we can have, because previously we had mostly, let me say also for myself, because we used to allow only our parents to go and vote. We didn't bother to participate in politics, choosing the leaders. But now that we are facing the effects of this bad governance, we are looking for more political participation beyond the riots, where we have in the coming elections youth to take part in voting and also running for these seats, so that we can have a change in leadership.
Thank you. Maliba, I have a message, WhatsApp message. I believe it must be from Kenya on our WhatsApp. 0809597585 says, please ask Arnold Maliba, when was his Damascus moment? He had been supporting the government and even worked in Ruto's kitchen cabinet as an advisor, defending each and every mistake that Ruto's government committed on Kenyans, including Gen Zs. He even defended it in the aftermath of last year's June protest when Parliament was breached and many young people were killed. So, Maliba, can you answer? When was your Damascus moment? That's a
I'm so happy to. I'm so happy to actually respond to that.
Thank you.
I worked as a strategic communication advisor to the ruling party between 2022 in November all the way to last year in November. That is roughly about 26 months. Then I left and founded a party that is called Progress Plus Alliance. Midway, of course, my job changed a little bit, and then I became the head of public policy and head of public affairs. So he asked about when my Damascus moment would be. The good thing with me being a public person has been that I have been part and parcel of public discourse for a while. So I am actually on record, and when people ask for accountability, you follow through. Last year during the Gen Z uprising, I was the only person from the government side who actually was able to show up on TV and speak on 25th, 26th, and 27th when everybody, including the president, had shied away. And when I spoke, I actually said that as a country, we were not going in the right direction and that we needed to talk to each other. And that both sides weren't getting it right because as we were speaking, there was a little bit of, I don't know whether
I need you to wrap up, yes, because I have literally minutes and I've got questions coming in.
Literally, my Damascus moment was last year's Gen Z movement. And that's why I decided to go back to doing my work in Somalia and come back home and then be part and parcel of changing the country. Because I can tell you the truth that within government, there are so many good people, just as there are very funny crooks, even on the other side.
Thank you. Right, I have here, I'm going to answer a call and then I'll read a text and I'll give you both 1 minute answers. Hello? Can you turn your radio off, please? Hello? Oh, we can't take that. Literally, that was a bad line. I have your good evening, Cecile. Greetings to your two guests. My name is Tari from Lekki. My question to the man: why is it that 99% of African politicians and dealers are generally greedy, or I think the men leaders are generally greedy and selfish with powers? Because even in Nigeria here, the Senate and the House of Rep members are professionals in budget padding as a way to corner the people into their pocket, and the presidency, because of the corruption, they don't publicize FG contracts like the 10 billion. So what's the question? I think the question was part one, because I want to answer this call, and then like I said, we've only got a minute and a half. Yeah, I need you to 1 second. 1 second. Hello.
Yeah, this is okay.
Hurry up. Go on quickly.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. You see, I want to ask him, this is a state policy of the Kenyan regime all the time to be brutally, in dealing with their own people and even outsiders.
Okay, thank you. No, we don't have time, Titilope. Right, okay. So there you go. Do you want to answer that, Maliba? I'll give you 30 seconds each. 30 seconds to Monica, 30 seconds to Maliba.
So I'll simply say this. It's not that our leaders cannot do better. It's only that there's complacency among us, or rather apathy among us, the people.
Right.
What is happening in Kenya is that the people have raised the standard according to the constitution and the aspirations in the constitution, and the leaders are struggling to catch up. If you demand better, you will get better leaders.
Excellent.
That is what is happening here. And then to him who spoke about the police being brutal, the police are being overwhelmed because they are shielding greedy and corrupt politicians, and then the people are coming out in numbers that the police cannot meet.
Thank you so much. Monica, do you have 10 seconds? Would you like to add anything to that? 10 seconds.
Yes, to answer on that question on police brutality, it is the reason we keep going to the streets, so that we can have accountability from the police and justice for our victims.
Thank you.
So it's an endless fight.
Thank you so much, Maliba Arnold and Monica Atieno. Thank you so much for joining us on Borderline.
More talk, news and sports after this.
All right, class, settle down. Today, let's talk about how you started your day.
We got dressed.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3